Hey everybody, this is Mad Matt Carter. Thank you so much for watching the AIWF Network YouTube channel as well as the AIWF Ringside Wrestling channel. If you like what you see, please do us a big favor. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that bell to get notifications every time we post new videos on both our channels. It means a lot to us, and thanks a lot for watching once again.
Everybody, this is Rick Del Santo. You're listening to Pro Wrestling Wire Radio. Uncle Otis is to my left and is joining me as always. We have a very special guest, Buzz Bloodsaw, joining us here today. Finally, we get you to get on the show. We've been trying to get this together. Our schedules don't always match, but glad to have you here today.
I'm happy to be here. Yeah, it's been a journey, but we're getting it done, so that's what matters, you know? It's good.
Absolutely. Otis, do you want to open up with anything today?
Yeah, I mean, I've been waiting for some time for this one here. We go back a little bit now. He's a potato.
Yeah,
he's a friend of the potato. No doubt.
We've done a couple now. It's good.
We've done two or three. Yeah, and I love them. I love them. I especially when I let you take charge.
No, don't do that. That's a terrible plan. I'm crazy.
Oh, no, it's fun. It's fun for me.
Listen, you got to have fun, man. Especially in the wrestling business, man, it's entertainment. If you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, why are you doing it? You know what I mean? Get out there and change it up. Get weird, bro. You know, too many people take it too serious.
I like that. He said get weird. I like that. Getting weird is the best part about life, really.
Yeah, man. Right? That's the whole concept, man. That's the whole concept here. You know, life is boring, man. Make it exciting. Get weird. Don't be afraid to do it. You know, it's good.
How are you feeling this morning after last night?
How do I feel, man? I feel great. You know, when you go into a match like that with a 6-man tag, when you go into something like that, you never really know what to expect. There's a lot of bodies and a lot of people, and you know, I never really tagged up with Bano or with Corey Duke before. So how do you really know what to prepare for? You're going in there with an actual tag team, the Boricua Bombers. They've got chemistry and they've worked together. They know each other well. So it's like in a situation like that, you have to be prepared for anything to break down. And it did a little bit, but I think we did okay. Maybe we walked away with the win. And at the end of the day, what else are you supposed to do? You know. That Duke boy, you know, he's got some potential coming down the line. We'll see how it goes for him, but I think a lot of the guys coming out right now, the next generation of wrestlers at PAPW, man. Every time I get on one of these and I'm talking about PAPW, you know, the work that Paul's doing, Mario's doing, and those students, and they're coming out of it. They're training hard, man. They're making something for themselves, and like, you know, that's the goal of wrestling, right? What's going to happen tomorrow? Someday Bloodsaw ain't going to be out there, so who's going to be the next? So I think it's looking pretty good.
You've been a staple of PAPW for, I mean, probably since before I started going, probably 5-6 years ago. So you've been there, you know.
Yeah.
I think when I came in, you were still the Intercontinental Champion, if I remember correctly. Maybe the United States Champion. I'm trying to remember.
So my first title there was the U.S. Heavyweight title. I had that one, the longest reigning PAPW U.S. Heavyweight Champion history. I think I had it for almost 3 years. Something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a big run for me. I was there for doing that, and then after that, I had the Intercontinental. Then I retired that title when I had the AIWF title come in. I retired it in order to make myself eligible for that tournament. And, you know, we've just been riding these waves, man, but it's all good, doing good things.
Let's talk about your relationship with the AIWF, as this will be airing on the AIWF network. So we are part of that brand. So, you know, shout out to Rick and Matt for killing it out there doing the AIWF. You've worked there on and off for a number of years, correct?
Yeah. So I've actually done. If you were to go back in time, 8-10 years, something like that. Jekyll, who's the last man in that 6-man tag match, he and I went out to Tennessee probably 10 years ago. They had one of their AIWF Super shows, and we were in the tag team gauntlet match. I want to say it was like 40 tag teams or something crazy like that. He and I were the first two tag teams to enter, and we ended up winning the whole thing. So that night we ended up in another Four Pillars match for the tag championships for the AWF. We didn't make it out of that one. But yeah, we beat something like 38 or 39 tag teams together to get into that. And that was 10 years ago on a tag team basis. Most recently, working with Matt Classic. I mean, no offense to anyone else in wrestling, but Matt Classic probably is the most active dude in pro wrestling. I mean, I say this all the time. If I text him at 7 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 3 p.m., he's answering my text. It's like, don't you sleep, bro? What are you doing? But I mean, he makes great connections. AIWF as a whole, for anyone who doesn't really know about that brand, it's like if you took the NWA, but then you added the connectivity of the modern day social media, that's what it is. Because, in the modern era of wrestling, it's like, there's no more who's that guy coming out of Georgia and we're living in Alabama. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of eyes on these things. And so Matt Classic, what he does with the brand, so I think it's 150 companies in 49 countries now. But it's like when you get seen on that, you're seen in all of those. So it's he does really a ton of work to make these opportunities happen for guys. And like, it is what you get out of it, man. If you want to put some work in, you want to jump on a podcast with guys like you two. I mean, you guys are doing podcasts constantly. I think there's not enough credit given to the idea that like, hey man, we hit the gym, we paint our face, we get in the ring. But like without guys like you doing the work because it's not just filming it. It's the filming, the editing, the promotion, the back end of it, attending the shows, taking the pictures. It's like you guys put in so much work to make what we do even matter. So like, I think a lot of people in pro wrestling deserve more of the credit than they get. You know what I mean? And this is just one of those examples. But yeah, man, AWF, it's great. I'm doing it. I love working with those guys.
Rick, how do we follow that up? I mean,
Well,
I'm like almost
as I
in
was gonna
tears
say
over
is-
here.
Well,
Matt's been a good friend of the show for a number of years now. He sent me numerous guests, over there. So when I found out that locally we're getting a AIWF affiliate, my favorite group, I guess, Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling was becoming an AIWF affiliate, and getting their championship. And I got a little bit excited because I watch the weekly television. I keep up on the product. I talk to Matt probably 2-3 times a week. Rick Diesel probably once a week. I always have to send him the videos that we record here tonight. So I'm like, there's a big whole great product out there, I think. And like you said, it's imagine the NWA times, I don't know, 200, I guess. You know what I mean? As far as like groups that are involved, and they're constantly adding to that always.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, too many people right now. I think in the modern era, right, there's this resurgence of people realizing that pro wrestling doesn't have to just be one product on television.
Right.
There's so many of these opportunities out there as a wrestler. If you want to go, because when you really break it down, what's a pro wrestler? You get paid to wrestle. Being a professional of anything is when you can get paid for it and pay some of your bills,
Yes.
And nowadays it's like, if you were just, and I do it constantly. I talk to promoters. I'm looking at Europe for next year for a tour of Europe with AIWF and trying to set something up for like a 2-week span to head over there and do that. And, I got a couple of other surprises that I can't mention, but, I'm constantly talking to these people in different countries and, what you make of wrestling is the work you put into it. How many of these places can you go? Because at the end of the day, wrestling originally started as something that was a grassroots product, and that never went away. And if you study the history of wrestling and where it came from, and it's all cyclical, it's all coming back around. So I think we're at a really great time for wrestling and wrestlers in general to be able to be successful. I mean, if you want to make it and you want to make this your living, you don't need to wait for WWE to call you. Go make some money today, look good for tomorrow, figure it out, brother. You know what I mean? It's a great time.
I think since probably COVID or prior to COVID, that really kicked into gear. People didn't need WWE to get to that level in a way.
Yeah.
There was guys that would, look at, and maybe this comparison is a little off, but look at guys like Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks who made their careers by themselves. They got to Japan and ended up becoming gigantic superstars over there without the help of the World Wrestling Entertainment, who is basically the only major company we had here in the United States.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, some of the guys I was coming up with. So I used to have a school in Pennsylvania where I taught, and I had a couple of students come
Oh,
through
really?
and do some finishing work with me and do all that kinds of stuff. But one of my favorite examples of that, and I talk about this guy constantly, is somebody who deserves everything he gets. He's currently signed for TNA, but Ace Austin. I don't know if
Okay.
you guys are familiar with him, but like
Yep.
Ace Austin and I used to hit the road together all the time. When I took him up to Canada, it was like he was very fresh in the business, very new to the business, but like of all the guys I've ever gotten the privilege to work with and see develop, I mean, that dude deserves everything he gets. He's the most humble, hardworking dude that I had known up until that point in pro wrestling. So like every time I see him, because like he's been to Japan, he's on TV for TNA, he's doing great, fantastic things. And so a guy like that, man, you can't ever talk about that kind of work ethic enough. In the modern day sense, though, PAPW, we have some guys who remind me of that so much. Guys like the Alan Compasses, the Corey Dukes, these guys who are just making towns, and just doing it. And that's when you make it, it's the old saying, right? Making towns, brother. But like that's wrestling, man. If you're making towns, what are you doing? So yeah, a lot of these guys though, they're on the right path, doing really cool things. It's cool.
What do you think about the current crop of students at PAPW? I think right now it's probably the best there's been in a number of years, right? I mean, you got guys like the Duke brothers. There's Deuce who made his debut last night. There's
Hmm.
Nelly. I'm trying to think offhand who else. There's
Jada.
Sylvan that's there.
That's it. The recent guys
Jada,
you
yeah,
Jada Kaizo.
yeah,
It's still fairly recent. I think Alan
Jeremy.
Compass is now doing Jeremy. I think Alan Compass is a
yep,
little older, but I feel like he's still brand new to me for some reason. A
yeah,
lot of these guys, like I view them as young students, but I think a lot of them they have this great benefit of there's so many of them that they can really work off of each other. Iron sharpens iron, right?
right.
When you're the only person in there and you're trying to push yourself and motivate yourself to get better, it's harder. But when you could look around the ring and you can see guys and you're like, well, I'm pretty good at this, whatever this could be. It could be I'm a great mat technician or I'm a great whatever, right? But then you look across the ring and you see another guy who's fresh, young, and they're good at something else. It drives you to be like, well, I could do that. Well, if you can do
Hmm.
that, then go over there and do it with them. Prove you can do that to them. And I think a lot of these guys, they've got so many different flavors and variety, not just in their backgrounds, but like their aesthetics. Let's face it, pro wrestling. If you guys have ever heard one of my interviews, I always get to Ox Baker and like his theory that pro wrestling is like a giant circus, and everybody has to know that when you go to the circus, you're not just there to see acrobats, you're not just there to see lion tamers, you're not just there to see tightrope walkers. You want to see all of those things. And so I think at PAPW, especially with the current crop of students, they naturally have these tendencies and size discrepancies and power discrepancies and things that allow for just such a more developed and interesting product base that for
Yeah.
them as students finding their niche, who they want to be, it's it's able to help them look around the room and really discern for themselves. It took me years to figure out anything about who I am or who Bloodsaw is. So for these guys, I feel like, and I'm always trying to push them, like, think about who you are. Think about what that means to you. Be yourself, but be yourself bigger. And it's like, but yeah, the crop of guys down there, there's like, I think 14, 15, 16 students, because there are some that haven't even debuted yet, but there are more upcoming. And man, they're varied and they're different and they're all working on honing their own individual presentational
Yeah, it's a
package.
very diverse crop of guys and gals.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's gonna blow up. I feel like by the end of 2025, PAPW is going to be doing big things. I don't want to say anything crazy, but I will say, speak it into existence, there's gonna be some wild things coming down the turnpike. It's gonna be good.
Well, that's great to hear. That's great to
Hmm.
hear. So I love PAPW. I love,
Mm.
I guess that's kind of how I got involved loosely with the world of media and how I got involved in podcasting and radio, or returned to radio and such. I used to be involved in radio many, many years, and a chance running into Paul Roma at a gas station on my way to work in the morning, and he invited me to, this is the first time I ever met him. I knew he lived local. This has to be 6 or 7 years ago. And he's like, "Oh, come down to a show sometime." Now, I hadn't been to indie wrestling shows in about 3 or 4 years since I divorced my first wife, and I was remarried. And when I went to the show, I had a blast. I had known Big Daddy. I had known the Guardian of Chaos for many, many, many years.
Big Daddy's great, man.
Oh, he's awesome. And he's become a great friend since, in that time. So when I came down to the show, and I had a blast, literally. I met so many great people. I had already known him, and I was trying to get back into radio. And then I said, "Oh, fuck it. I'm just going to do a wrestling podcast instead." And then it just kind of took off from there. And it's been, now we're going on 5 years. And we're rapidly approaching 400 episodes. So
that's awesome.
So there was times where I would do 3, 4, 5 a week. So,
well, that's the kind of workload that people don't really think about. I joke, but it's like when you do a podcast, there has to be an episode 1, right? And episode 1, it's like this daunting task of when are we going to get to 400 or when do we get to 100? You know what I mean? Yeah. And too many people, they fizzle out in the effort. So that's why I say not enough of these wrestlers, when there's like an opportunity to get on a podcast or do one of these things, they're like, "Oh man, I'm busy. That's my day off. It's whatever." It's like, well, it's nighttime. It's late at night. We're here. We're doing it because at the end of the day, man, that's sometimes what it takes. And you guys, whether I show up or someone else shows up or whoever it is, you guys are there and being present. So it's like giving that credit back to where it is. People don't think about it. "Oh, I'm number 385. Yeah, man. Well, there was 384 before you." So it's like, give these dudes credit,
Yeah, and the friendships I've made and the the people I've met in that 5 years, it's just been amazing. Literally, I never thought I'd be sitting there. I guess
with such a handsome partner.
Well, yeah, okay. Critiquing professional wrestling, sitting there next to Mario Mancini and Paul Roma. You know what I mean? Guys that I watched growing up on television, and that to me is kind of amazing. And of course, I've become friends with the enforcer Kevin Saban, and it's just an amazing time. You know what I mean? To do to be a part of this.
Jimmy Valiant, Boogie Woogie, man.
Legendary Boogie Woogie.
Wait a minute, baby. Wait a minute. Hang on.
What are you doing around
Who was that calling you, buddy?
This is our neighborhood.
You done made a mistake.
You should be retired, Boogie.
Wait a minute, boys. Let me take a bite of my king dog.
You say king dog?
King dog?
Is that what you said?
What happened? Come on, boy.
Don't let hunger bully you. Get yourself a king dog and you too can become a super hunger fighter.
It still is wild to me, man, because like I get Merry Christmas texts from like Mario Mancini and Paul Roma, and like I watched them when I was growing up. Like they were, I only watched 80s professional wrestling. I didn't really watch 90s or 2000s wrestling because I wasn't really supposed to, because I was crazy as a kid, and like they're like, "Oh, if you watch wrestling, you're gonna be crazier." So like, but as a kid, man, I really did. I watched nothing but the '80s Coliseum home videos. I used to sit there and watch those over and over again. So when I met Paul Roma, I was like, "Dude, I know you." Like now I get to wear the chain, and like this chain is an homage to Hercules. Like Roma cleared that with Hercules' family for me. It's like, I've watched you. I watched him on TV. I watched you on TV. It's like it's crazy to me that these are the guys who are still around and still helping to give back. And they're the ones who will tell you like, "Hey man, you should do that. Don't do that." And it's like, who gets that? Not everybody gets that kind of an opportunity in general, let alone with somebody who, you watched. So it's really cool to have like that gap, the bridged gap.
Right.
Dig it.
Yep. Otis, do you have any questions or whatnot?
Yeah, I was wondering, where did you come up with? Is there a story behind the Bloodsaw character? Is there a story behind the face paint itself, the name, the attitude, whatever? Like, what's the story behind that? Did it come to you in a dream, or was it
No, I
something from
wish.
when you were a
That'd
kid?
be, that'd be way cooler, right? No, so originally, my trainer had originally given me the name Buzz Bloodsaw, right? And I was like, okay, I don't know really what to do with that. And the original concept had been, um, I was basically going to be like an inmate, like come out with like the jumpsuit and I'm a murderer or something, right? And they were like, what do we do with this? My first show ever was in Pennsylvania. I was down to the show down there, and I was on the pre-show. I was wrestling Adrian Bliss, and at the time, I wasn't planning to do any face paint, right? So I'd grown up watching Ultimate Warrior. He was my guy. Like his intensity, his excitement, like my famous story is I was watching the Coliseum home video. I think it was SummerSlam where he was going to wrestle Undertaker in a body bag match. And there's a promo right before the match, and it's Paul Bear, and he's going around his house, and all these bodies are falling out. And you're like, oh, this is crazy. Because at the time, I was like 4. So I'm like, this is nuts. And then you see Undertaker come down to the ring, and you're like, holy shit. Like, that guy is obviously unbeatable. I mean, he's a complete phenom. Why would anybody think they could possibly defeat this guy? And then the Warriors music hits, and then you're like, you see him come flying down to the ring, and he's excitement embodied. And you're like, you know what? A second ago, I didn't think anybody could beat this guy, but he might have it. So growing up, I was always like, Ultimate Warrior, that's the guy. So I get to the show, and there's a live band, and they were painting their face. They were doing this thing like the Crow, because at the time they were trying to do like a sting knock. And they were like, hey, why don't you paint your face? Because I was talking to the band, and they were going to play an entrance song for me. And I was like, I mean, yeah. So I went in the bathroom, and I think it was just a white face with like a red streak across it. Because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But that was, that was like how I debuted. It was like, that was the face paint look. And then I was like, this is terrible. I can't keep doing just that. So I kind of workshopped it a little bit. I had some fun with it. And it's like, I don't really know how I ended up being in this. It's just, this is who I am. Yeah, so in terms of like attitude for Bloodsaw and like who is Bloodsaw, the name iterations for me have been kind of a significant portion of where does it go next, right? So my most recent moniker ever since I had won the last Hercules Hernandez tournament was Bloodsaw Unchained. And that's why I started wearing the chain and representing what this is. But, as I've gone through it, I've been Buzz Bloodsaw, the Machine for a little while. So depending on where you're at in the history, and part of it is that when you want to be something or who you are, you have to internalize that. The concept of Bloodsaw really is this idea of be weird. Too many people, you wake up, you go to your job, come home from your job, you eat your dinner, you watch some television, and you go to bed. You wake up and you go to work and you come home and you eat your dinner and you watch television, you go to bed. You wake up and you do this for years and years and years, right? And everybody at some point thinks to themselves, what if I just didn't? What if it wasn't me today? What if today I did that instead? And I try to represent that. I try to, the origination of the concept of Bloodsaw is this idea of, my original concept was the American Gothic gone wrong. And it was rooted in that because the American Gothic photo is the farmer and his daughter and the monotony of that. And what would happen if that was your real life? And the monotony of every day, you wake up at 4, you milk the cows, you do this, you do that, you do that, you go to bed, and you do that. And like, you would lose it. Anybody would lose it. And so I think that's part of why Bloodsaw, despite the face paint and looking crazy, people tend to connect with it. Because on some level, like we've all been there where we're like, man, if I could hit my boss in the face with a chair, my day would be chef's kiss. So sometimes that's what it is. And so whenever I kind of get lost in who I am or what's coming next for me, you just sit and you reflect and you're like, well, what do I want to do? And what's stopping me from doing it? I'm just gonna go do it. and that's what I let it become. And that's the whole concept. It's like Bloodsaw Unchained, man. At that point in my career and what I was doing and what I needed, I had lost the title and I was being a little bit too carefree and a little bit too of that. And so I had to turn up the aggression. I had to bring back the power. I mean, I'm 250 pounds, not as a joke, not as a wrestling reference. I'm 250 pounds. I can squat 500 pounds. I can deadlift 500 pounds. I can bench press 300 pounds. There's some reality rooted in this idea that, like, if I decide I'm going to go grab your favorite wrestler and just toss him, I can. Like, and so that was the Unchained part of it. It's like, why am I letting myself feel less than that if I could just go and be? And so that's the Unchained. There's some reflection happening lately. You'll see that coming soon, but no spoilers.
We're not getting enough spoilers out of you today. It's kind of,
Hey, listen, you
like
want some
spoilers,
Oh, you want some? Well, I got some. We'll see. Maybe I'll sprinkle them in. I'll start letting them fly a little bit for you. I got you.
Why don't you tell me how you chose the Alice Cooper song as your entrance song? You've been using that for a number of years now. Feed My Frankenstein, it was a 90s hit for him, and I think it's kind of an oddball choice of music entrance, and I like that. And I know that you're kind of a music and theater guy, so
yeah, man. I love Cooper. Love Cooper, man. Yeah. I'm a huge. I've seen him in concert more than anyone else I've seen in concert. Actually, I joked. Last time I saw him, his first song he played was "Feed My Frankenstein." So I was like, "Oh, he and I have the same theme music, But no, so "Feed My Frankenstein," Alice Cooper in general. So going back, you're right. I am a theater guy. I did professional theater. I sing, I dance, I tap dance, I play saxophone. I do a bunch of weird stuff because I don't know. That's who I am as a person. So Alice Cooper for a theme song for me, the first ever CD that I bought with my own money was Welcome to My Nightmare. So I bought that when I was like super duper young, man. That was literally the first thing I've got $20. I'm going to go purchase a CD because that was still what you had to do. And I'm going to listen to that over and over again.
Back when CDs were $20, I mean, when they first came out in the 80s and 90s, dude. They were, $20.
It was not cheap. Yeah. No. And that was the thing is you couldn't, this is before you had the LimeWires and the Napsters. We're talking like I had to go buy a CD at the store. Yep. So I got my CD and I came home and I listened to it constantly. And like all those songs were so great. And like, as you get older, you kind of expand on it and you learn more music. And so Feed My Frankenstein, if you put that song in a library with a bunch of other music that you might have heard in the early 90s of pro wrestling, you would think he wrote that as a wrestling theme song because the song itself, it's got that sweet hook in the beginning. It's like, yes, yes, I know you're hungry. And here comes dinner. And, face paint guy being what I am, I loved when Legion of Doom would start off with the mic and they would come, so the idea of like that slow speaking and then the music hits, always been a huge fan of that. Love it. So the song itself starts that way. And then there's the guitar riff that's in it. Dude, how could you listen to that and not get hyped? And that's it. Like when you come out, it's like, if you listen to like Bret Hart's like, it's like everybody, all those theme songs had that sweet guitar riff. And I'm like, dude, he wrote this as a wrestling theme. He didn't know it. Or maybe he did. But like for me, it clicks, man. I've come out to some other things. I've used some heavy techno. I've used some more crazier things. But like that song, you come out to, I ain't evil. I'm just good looking. And like, Bloodsaw, man, like that's always been like a running joke for me. I'm like, I come out, I've got my top hat, I've got my vest, I've got my face paint, and there's some blood on my face. I hope you're okay with that. And so that song, it just embodies so many things about what it is. And they didn't happen at the same time. Like I said, I didn't pick up that song until probably 6-7 years ago now. So like the first half of my career was other songs, but yeah, Alice Cooper, that whole concept. I think, Rick, you saw my new T-shirt coming out.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, man, it's a total Cooper homage. So it's Bloodsaw. Welcome to my nightmare.
That's off of It's a reference to one of his oh crap, I can't think of the album title now, but it's one of the earlier,
It's
like one of the '70s ones, right? Yeah. Is
well,
it?
that's Welcome to My Nightmare. It's Welcome to My
Yeah,
Nightmare.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so I had an artist, Dave Cole, who's also a pro wrestler. Dave Cole,
I
Davey
remember
Cole
Dave.
Paints. Yep, great dude. He he's gonna kill me. He actually designed that for me like 5 years ago, and then I just didn't get it printed. I had this great idea. I was like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and then it just kind of like sat on the shelf waiting. And I was like, I don't know why I'm not doing this. I don't know why I'm not doing this. And procrastination is a beast. What are you gonna do? But yeah, so that's been like this locked away secret that just finally dropped. But I'm excited about it. They're ordered today. They sent the order in yesterday. She said they're shipping in. They're getting printed on Tuesday. So like any day now, we'll be live and official, which is pretty cool and exciting.
Yeah.
So
You gotta,
not quite a
merchandise
spoiler,
is
but
so no, merchandise is so important these days in pro wrestling. It seems.
hmm
You thank the E for that. They started young with action figures and all. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a great thing
yeah,
actually because especially on an independent level. You're sitting there at your table and then somebody gets to come up and buy something, an 8x10, a shirt, what have you. But you're going to Europe. You probably should bring a handful of shirts with you. You know what I'm saying?
well, so I'm ramping some things back up. Actually, this morning I had a meeting with somebody with some 3D printers, so I can, I used to be in the action figure game. I had my own action figure. I've had 3 of them over the years.
Oh
So
wow.
getting back into that game and having those redesigned with a fresh look at my current gear and my current concept and where I'm going next, to get some of those action figures reprinted out. They're based out of Berlin. And I think that's one of the things about, being in the modern age, which is really cool too, because back in the day when you wanted an action figure done, it was a lot harder. Getting a hold of a place in China that was making action figures for a reasonable price and having to like negotiate that, and translate that and do contract work and like buying them by the lot and the bulk. It was super frustrating. So I think that's one of the nice pushes of the modern age. But yeah, coming soon. I literally just this morning met with the action figure. It's a couple that does it. One of them, I gave him some images so he can render the files and get the vector imaging correctly. Or I don't do 3D printing, so I don't know the actual thing, but so you can actually render the images and get everything filized down. So that should hopefully be done in like the next month because I've got a couple of things I'm going to want some more merch for, and I've got one other design, which I think you guys are going to kick out of, but it's when I come out to the ring, it's Bloodsaw, and we're here to see one very specific thing, and it's wrestling. So I have another design that I just finished where it's if you guys go to hockey games, have you ever been to a hockey game or you do that thing?
Yeah.
They have they have the rally towels where you can like kind of wave the rally towel.
Yep.
So I have this design I'm doing, and when you look at it, it says Bloodsaw,
Oh
and when
yeah,
you flip
yeah,
the
yeah.
towel over, it says wrestling. So
You showed
I've
me
got
that.
rally. Yeah, listen, I'm trying to give some spoilers now. I feel like I got to make this thing juicy. So, those are coming down the pipeline too, getting printed. So, got a couple of cool things on the way. It's going to be good.
I'm excited about the action figure.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
it's one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in that. I don't collect many figures these days. I have,
Yeah.
I bought I think I bought the Nick Aldis figure before he went to
hmm
WWE. It was a very limited run, and I think that was the last action figure I bought. So,
Well, the thing for
yeah,
me with action figures in the modern sense, or really any toy in the modern sense, right? Um, the everything nowadays, I think they're made to be a collectible, and
yes,
like they're priced to be a collectible, and that kind of bugs me. Like I much prefer like we were talking about like the kid they start them young with the kids and they're going to buy something, right? It's like if you're going to go to an indie show and you have a kid and that kid wants the action figure and that action figure is like $45. It's really hard to be like, I'm going to buy this for you and you're going to break this in 5 minutes. So I feel like there has to be some empathy level from us as people putting this stuff out where like, don't make everything that has to be a collectible, man. Like, you know what, man, here's a toy. It's 5, 10, 15 bucks. And you know what, man, if you break it, you can glue it back together and no one's like losing sleep over that kind of stuff. I just feel like I prefer this playfulness that wrestling can identify with and really bring back to the forefront of it. Because, buying a Nick Aldis limited run action figure, man, I'm sure maybe you found it at the store, so it was still like stock price, but like, that's something you put on the shelf, and 20, 30 years from now, you turn around and you sell it for one of your kids to buy a car. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I want to get back into those areas of fun.
It might have been the same company that printed Roma's figures. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But I had to special order it through Instagram only.
Yep.
And it cost me $40. And then I didn't realize that there was also something, there was a different version available only in the UK, which he had a different pair of tights on. So I'm like, I wanted that one too. But then, of course, shipping an action figure from the UK was going to cost an arm and a leg.
Tons.
But merchandise, figures, toys, and stuff like that, anything these days is not made just for the general public. It is for collectors and stuff like that. And these collectors, they kind of ruin the market in a way, if you think about it. They ruin the
100%,
market,
man.
And it doesn't make it easy for a child to be like, I want this. I know I'm going to sound dated, a Sting action figure. I don't know. I just chose Sting, but it's like they make the $10 figures and then they make the $20 and $30 figures. You know what I mean? So somebody like that, have them kind of figured out in a way, but. When AEW released those action figures, every figure is $30, which is just, or $25 to $30, which is an atrocious price. No kid's going to be able to buy that. Just like you said, play with it, break it, and then it's like it's kind of ruined. They're made to go up in value.
Not for nothing. That drives me crazy though. When I go to somebody's house and I see they got 30 figures still in the package up on the shelf, and I'm like. Because I used to be a real nerd with that years ago, and I had over 300 action figures. But I was the kind of guy that took them out of the package and then paired them up against each other on a shelf in different grappling holds, and that was the way I enjoyed them. I didn't play with them, but it was cool to set them up like they were wrestling.
Well, I remember back in the day, because even though I wasn't really doing it, like watching the wrestling, I had some like old Andre figures. But we're talking like, remember the rubber ones where they wouldn't even move? They were just
the LJN figures.
They're like 9 inches tall or something.
Yeah, I had a bunch of those, and like, when you're a kid and you don't really know, okay, well, Andre the Giant is going to wrestle against the Incredible Hulk, and like you're doing, you're just playing, you're just having these imagination matches, and it's like. I think I have like 60 or 70, like those style loose figures that I still have. And like the kids run wild with them because that's the point. It's like I looked it up one day. I have a Shawn Michaels one that like, if it was in pristine condition, it would be worth like $100. In the condition it's in, I think it retails for like 40 on eBay. And I'm like, I don't even care. I would rather like one of the kids like, oh no, you throw him and you're scratch. It's like, go play, man. Be a kid. I love that. I love that aspect of what pro wrestling is. It's supposed to be an escape from this reality of like, we're going to go there and for like 3 hours, man, we're just going to be in that world and we're going to be there. And like those action figures and that stuff should all be coming home. Like bring home the fun, bring home the excitement. Like wrestling is exciting. It's a good time. Like let it be a good time. You know what I mean? So that's my soapbox on that stuff. But that's why I like the toys. It's important that they're able to be purchased to be broken. Have some fun.
It's enjoyable.
It's
enjoyable.
Yeah, man. Wrestling is fun.
Yeah, absolutely, it's fun. So, how much of it? Like you said, you grew up as an '80s kid. How old are you? Do you mind me asking how old the Bloodsaw is?
I'm 35, but I grew up older. Well, I grew up older because so my dad, when I was a kid, he used to sell VHS tapes. That was his job. So I didn't have cable as a kid. I didn't watch cable. We didn't have it. That wasn't a thing for us. It didn't matter. But we had VHS tapes, which is why I grew up on the 80s, even though, I was born in 89. But everything I watched, if it was on a Coliseum home video or it was, my dad sold like B horror flicks. That was like his whole thing because back then you still sold VHS in bulk and that was what he was doing. So when he had to bring me to work, I would be in the back of his office watching tapes in one of those. Remember those old school TVs that had the built-in VCR that were like at the time very expensive? Yeah, I would hang out and one of those was like my babysitter and I'd be throwing the tapes in and watching it. But I grew up on like that style of wrestling, because that style of wrestling, that style of TV, that style of movie, I've seen way more movies that were out prior to like 92 than after 92, because it was what I had access to. And that's what I was playing with. But that's kind of how I grew up. So even though, I'm only 35, but I feel like I'm 100, for some reasons like that.
That's part of being a competitive wrestler, I believe. You got banged up a little bit, so you're gonna feel like you're 100.
Yeah, man. I've had a couple of 2-3 injuries here and there, couple 2-3, but you live, you learn, you move on, you get better. So it's good.
Secondhand Heroes and Home for Wayward Villains is a comic book shop and gaming store that also features Magic the Gathering and D&D. Located at 18184 Leesville Road in Evanston, Virginia, Secondhand Heroes is your one-stop shop for you to get your nerd on. Open 7 days a week at 11 a.m. They don't close until the dice stop rolling. They buy, sell, trade, barter, and haggle, specializing in collectible toys, both vintage and modern, comics, Magic the Gathering, video games, console, and arcade cabinets to play, all set to free play. Host your game night with us. Monday night D&D video game competitions, and so much more. Something for the collector and gamer in us all. Call 434-317-0121 or shoot us an email with any questions to secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. Note, secondhandheroesva@gmail.com. That's 2ND, handheroesva@gmail.com. Come game with us.
Tell me about you're talking about the 80s or 80s horror movies, the B films, and that's I absolutely love B films, cult films.
Is it?
Like that. So yeah. Oh, absolutely. If you know me, and that's all I sit around and watch. It drives my wife nuts.
Okay.
I have to watch everything on my laptop because she refuses to watch horror movies. So,
Sure.
So
Yeah. So like,
what's your
let's see,
favorite movie? Tell me.
So like back in the day, my dad was one of like the producers put on for like Basket Case 3. So
awesome.
so he had done that, and then I can't remember the name of it. I want to say it was called like The Cabin or something along that lines. It was like a reflective, so when you turned to the VHS, the eyes would pop through this cabin on the front of the VHS cover. He had helped design that. Back in the day, he'd done an interview with Stephen King. So like, I had the fortune of seeing some of those things along those lines. My favorite though, I mean, it's super cliche. Don't judge me. It is what it is. Freddy Krueger. He's not necessarily a B horror, but at the time, I feel like he wasn't necessarily presented as the leading horror. It was definitely Jason and Myers. They were the two leading horrors, and then Freddy was kind of off to the side. But I've always loved Freddy. I love the imagination of his killings. I think it's a lot more exciting. If you wanted to talk about like more of a B horror, I really dug the Leprechaun movies. I thought those ones were super creepy. And the fact that they always did those movies without like the CGI, because they actually had a little person doing it, it always made it feel a little bit creepier to me. So yeah, man, the Leprechaun, Basket Case was cool. I really dug those movies because my dad had done stuff with him, so I liked that. But yeah, so like those kinds of things. But like in the modern sense, because nowadays I feel like although there is still B horror, a lot of it goes for more of like the grotesque first, and then
too many special effects, computer based. That's why I love the old school horror, the slasher, and and you could find good horror today. You just have to read about it. I used to, even up 5 or so years ago, I was just reading horror magazines. Everything was direct to video or now direct to streaming. You know what I mean? So I'd go to, I don't know if you kind of live somewhat close to me, but I'd go to, Best Video in Wallingford or Camden rather. And, when I lived close to there, and they would always have the greatest, B film, the cult section. They have a whole section dedicated to Roger Corman. Okay. My all-time favorite director of all time, so a whole section dedicated to him, but I would just always sometimes just pick out something that looked interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well, and a lot of times too, that's why like the covers were so important, right? Because like I said, that one cover, I still think about it because that's what makes me, I don't even remember the name of the movie, but like that was it. I remembered that and it was kind of cool. Locally, did you ever meet like DG Haven?
It sounds familiar.
So for a while there, he was doing indie management. He had worked with Tommy Dreamer and got into pro wrestling a little bit, but he was like a local Connecticut horror producer.
Okay.
That was what he did. So like working with him and doing some stuff with that way back in the day. We're talking 10, 12 years ago. But let me ask you this. So if you like horror, do you go to any of like the trails or any of the haunted trails and stuff like that?
Nah, I don't really take my time. I probably should, but I don't.
Well,
You know,
so
I don't have a lot of time.
I don't,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't go to them because I have this really bad reflex of if you pop out, I punch first and ask questions later. But, but like, I think 9 or 10 years ago now, I actually got to go be Bloodsaw at the Trail of Terror in Wallingford. So I
wow.
had like a little section where I got to like have people walk by me, and I got to do like a creepy version of Bloodsaw. But it was Bloodsaw, but it was kind of fun. So I like to dabble now and then back into some of the scarier entertainment stuff because it's fun. You know, I enjoy
Yep,
those sorts of
absolutely.
things. So
I do have a Stephen King story. You brought up
yeah,
him.
what do you got?
My cousin used to play Little League Baseball. I never was into it, but he was playing against this team, and guess who was there? Stephen King. His son was on the opposing team at the time.
He was playing Joe. He was playing Joe.
Yeah. This is, it has to be 30 some odd years ago. It has to be in the late 80s, mid to late 80s.
That's awesome.
And my uncle goes, look, that's Stephen King over there. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. And sure as
Yep.
shit, it really was. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think he
Stephen
used to
King.
live like far out in Connecticut somewhere for a brief period, or he owned property here or something.
Yeah, now I think he's up in Maine full time.
Yeah. he's
But
in Maine.
like,
Yep.
but Stephen King, he's my favorite. So if you ask me my favorite poet of all time, it's Edgar Allan Poe. But my favorite writer of all time is Stephen King. I've read.
Right.
I'm like 75-80% of the way through reading every book he's written.
Oh, wow.
He's the only book that I go and I still buy at the store. His like series, The Tower. I don't know if you ever read it. It's like 8 books long now because he's had some addendums into it. But like that series and all that kinds of stuff and how it relates to all the other books he's written, I'm a huge mark for all that stuff, man. I go out and I read everything he writes. So I really dig his work.
Wasn't there a miniseries
Yeah.
produced to that? Like in the 90s?
Yeah.
Okay.
It flopped pretty hard. It was not good.
Yeah, I remember it getting terrible reviews. Otis,
They
you're
tried
kind
to
of quiet
redo it.
over there.
No,
Yeah, come
I'm
on,
getting
Otis.
into all this horror stuff because I was a B horror film. As a matter of fact, if you ever gotten off of exit 67, I believe, in Old Saybrook, you take a left at the end of the ramp. It's, I think, Route 157. You go under the highway. There's a very old house on the hill on the right-hand side, and that's where they filmed Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
Yeah?
Yeah, I went and I took some pictures of that house, and it's been for sale for a few $1 million now for quite some time. But the house is like completely falling apart. You can go on YouTube, and there have been people that have, trespassed and videotaped going through the house and looking at what's left inside, some of the furniture. And the place is literally, the property's taken it over.
Yeah.
But that's, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. That was, I used to work in the car dealership that was across the street from it. That's how I knew.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I'm a fan of the same stuff you guys are talking about. I used to like Victor Crowley, the Texas Chainsaw movies, stuff like that. I was very much into that. I'm not really permitted to watch that stuff anymore, though.
Doctor's orders.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, kind of.
It's ironic, man, because like I paint my face and I wear these chains, but like I don't necessarily do the horror thing, but I feel like I look like I do the horror thing. You know what I mean? It's just I feel like that's what I look
red
like.
that contributes to that look, though.
What are you gonna do? Yeah.
Do it in black. See what that looks like.
Nah.
Then I look like Kiss. Come on, we all know the answer to that.
You don't want to do that. Never mind. Let's not get my opinion on Kiss, okay? So,
All right. Fair enough.
I will say a lot of bad things about them. So
Oh, that's a shame.
it's a shame.
right.
Well, the one thing that I have to say about Kiss is I want to thank them for my favorite band existing in Cheap Trick. Okay. They helped Cheap Trick get exposure and get them launched, and Cheap Trick is my favorite band of all time. Besides the Ramones, those are my two favorite bands of all time. So, speaking of Stephen King, the Ramones, of course, did the soundtrack to Pet Cemetery. So there you go. All right.
There you go.
So
Full
what
circle.
else we got here? Yeah, see. What else we got here? What else we got? Otis, what else? Do you have anything else?
I was also thinking about last night's show.
Sure.
It was quite the crowd last night, huh? At Paradise Alley.
They were on fire. I tell you.
They were.
Yeah. I think that's a big testament to the guys who are putting in the work. You know what I mean? I've been there with PAPW since pre-COVID and now post-COVID, and it's kind of interesting to me because my first ever PAPW show was actually at the ice rink or the high school in East Haven. One of those, I think it was one of those. I can't remember.
The Malillo ice rink over there, right?
Yeah, that's what it was. So we were out there. That was my first show. So we were out there, and it was a good crowd. You know, and it was a packed building, and I feel like post-COVID, and I've noticed it not just PAPW, but there was like a shift where for a while, like the attendance was like, do I really want to go out? It's a tight building. Do I want to be confined? And I feel like now we're turning the corner where PAPW, like last night, I think we had to put more chairs out twice for people who are packing in.
Yeah.
And so as we're looking ahead to November, potentially going back to a bigger building more towards the idea of, can we do weekly episodic shows at the school? And then maybe we do quarterly blow-off shows where they're big and they're boisterous. And I think a lot of that, like John Armada over at Armada Brewing, I think his crowd and like the exposure we're doing there, and going out and doing some donation shows again and bringing that stuff back and just being a part of the community again, and you guys bringing in the exposure to worldwide phenomena, and like I'm trying to share it out when I get to go travel and wrestle somewhere else. I always try and tag PAPW as a place to be seen, and the young guys who are excited and taking the trip and they're tagging it. So I think the way the grassroots are really starting to settle back in and drive forward, man. And that's why I said I think in the next year, as this crowd is growing and getting hotter and getting excited, and if you miss a PAPW show, I think we're at the point where if you missed a show, you missed something happen, and you can't miss it. It's don't miss wrestling now. It's like if you miss last night, we got Corey Duke out there, and Corey Duke's going to win some matches, and he's going to do some crazy things, and so like. You got to be around to see what he's up to. And what's Alan doing? He won that tournament last night. Deuce made his debut last night. It's like all these guys. It's like if you weren't there, you missed it. And so the only way to make sure you don't miss it is to be there. And that's what it is.
Good point.
And,
Yeah.
I think that this year, Paradise Alley has been putting on some great shows. Like you said, there's kind of shift. It looks like, I don't want to say anything bad. I don't want to say that it suffered a little bit. But there was a time they were just putting on shows with who they had, right?
I think all of wrestling suffered. It wasn't
Absolutely.
just one person. It was everything.
Right. And, Paradise Alley is the first place I started going to indie shows again after I took that 2-3 year break from professional wrestling as a whole. So when I started going, I instantly fell in love with the product. I thought, oh, wow, this is great. But you guys were doing those Friday night weekly shows. And when I first started going, they were weekly, I think, right? They were weekly, and then it'd be like a monthly big show or a bi-monthly big show or something to that effect. And like at like you said, the ice rink over there, or then for a while it was at the Annex, and then there was the JCC. But it's like I said, post-COVID, there was a struggle there for pro wrestling as a whole, and it just seems like this year PAPW it's the best year they've had in a while, I think. It's kicking ass. Last night's show was awesome, I think.
Oh, my God, it was so good.
And I had a lot of fun at last night's show. And I got a lot of pictures, I haven't posted anything yet, but
all right.
I'm taking a break.
Hey, listen. Hopefully, I look okay in them. I've been. I joke post-COVID. I've been going through my struggles too, but it's all relative. It's all relative. That's cool.
I gained a shit ton of weight during COVID and post-COVID, but there was a lot of guys that have come into PAPW in the last year alone. Like Alan Bano, from Massachusetts, Springfield, Mass. He started coming down to the training facility, working out. Now he's on the roster, and it's good to see Alan Bano because I've had the opportunity to work with him in several different companies outside of PAPW, and he's a really great guy. He really is.
Super dude.
And to see him,
super dude.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. And to see him, doing so well in Paradise Alley. You know what I mean? It's kind of awesome to see that they're using him. And then, you got all these young kids. Like you said, Deuce debuted last night. Crowd was going nuts for him last night.
Yeah, loved it. And that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like Mr. Z.
Oh, Mr. Z is.
I really do. I really, really do. I think that, I don't know, he brings to me, I mean, everybody probably thinks the same thing. He gives you that vibe of The Undertaker when The Undertaker broke into the business as The Undertaker, except he's more boisterous than The Undertaker was. He's just big and ominous looking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's catching a lot of heat, and I think that's awesome because he deserves it.
You need that. Like I said, you need to have the different elements of the circus, right? And I think he brings an element nobody else brings that. Everyone else, even like I do face paint, Jekyll does some face paint, Sylvan does the face paint, but he's the only one who puts some paint in his face, and he's just
He transforms him.
But his aura is different also. You know what I mean? I'm out there to have some fun. Sylvan is out there speaking for the trees, whatever that means. And then you got Jekyll who's off in the corner crazy. But then you got Mr. Z who's just out there to be your worst nightmare. And it's just this different. It's different. And that's why it works. It works so well because it's different. And if you can find what makes you different as an up and coming wrestler, then that's when you're not just going to be up and coming, but you're going to be successful too. So he's doing the right things. A lot of those guys are. They're doing the right thing to figure themselves out to be successful, not just to show up and wrestle.
Right.
So it's cool.
Right. And then we interviewed Corey Duke earlier today, and I think that I think that kid, for having 3 matches under his belt so far, like he
last night was 5. Last night was 5.
Last night was 5. Okay.
So I don't know how many people know this, but Corey Duke has actually been jumping in the car with me everywhere.
Oh, really?
So his actual, he's had 3 matches at PAPW, but his first match was actually in Tennessee at a show that I brought him and Jekyll down to. So they wrestled out Altamont, Tennessee for his debut. And then 6 weeks ago when I had gone up to Canada in Sept-Îles, Quebec, where I lost the AWF International title at that match. I'm going to get my rematch soon. But he had actually taken the ride with me. And Corey Duke, this is something you guys got to make sure. I've been telling everybody this, and he says stop telling people that. And I said, no, you got to tell people. Corey Duke, we're in Sept-Îles, Quebec, so we drove 17 hours north. I mean, straight north. We were 12 hours into Canada. So it only took us 5 hours to get to the border, and then we drove another 12 hours in Canada. So we were way northeast Canada in Sept-Îles, and they hadn't had wrestling there in 30 years. So since 1994, there hadn't been a professional wrestling show, indie or better, at all in that town. So after 30 years, the first guy to take a bump in front of a crowd in Sept-Îles, Quebec, and as I say, wake up the wrestling legends of that town, was Corey Duke. So Corey Duke is a Canadian legend.
Yeah.
Don't let him tell you different.
Was that in the scramble? Because I think he told us about him going with you, and he ended up in a scramble match.
That's not yet. That's this week. He's come with me to this was a singles match up in Canada. I'll send you the footage of it. It was for AIWF, the affiliate. So up there, I think they have better footage. I have a fan cam view of it because obviously it was his debut in Canada. It was his 3rd match ever. But I thought it was pretty cool, so I filmed it for him. But they had a really great. I don't know if have you ever talked with Drew Onyx at all? Rick or no?
I know. I've never talked to him. I remember him very well, though. I remember.
Yeah.
I think was he part of NWA Wildside for a while as well? Like back
he's
in the
done
day?
a ton.
He's done everything. Yeah. And I'm going back early 2000s, but I think he did I mean, that dude was everywhere. But I was trying to remember particularly about the Wildside. But
so he
actually. If you ever watch the Alliance blog podcast, alliance-wrestling.com, they did an interview with him last year, Drew Onyx.
Oh, really?
So it was like a modern night. Oh, yeah. It blew me away because I was like, oh, my God, Drew Onyx.
Yeah. Well, so he's the AIWF Canada president. So he runs that
Okay.
whole aspect of Canada, and he was the one putting on the show. So he had great production quality, great value footage and stuff like that. He had ringside, he had hard cam, he had all the right things. So, but yeah, so that was Corey's third match, and like the thing about Corey, man, with all these rides that he's doing, he asks questions, and then as we're driving, we'll throw on like some YouTube over on like the side of the car, and we'll watch some old AWA or something like that, just to kind of go back in time, because that's the wrestling that I think is where you should start. You learn.
It teaches a lot of these kids. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he's done a ton of work, man. And go ahead.
Yeah, we discussed that because he made a Harley race reference when we spoke with him, and I was like, "How's this kid so young know who the hell Harley race is?" And then he said, "I've done my homework," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
So he did mention getting in the car with you, so I'm guessing you contributed to him doing his homework and helping him out with the classic footage and such.
I was telling somebody, man, we counted last night. In the last 2 months, we've had over 60 hours in the car together, making towns. So, and I think in the next 7 weeks, I think last weekend was my last weekend off of wrestling until December. The second weekend of December, I don't currently have anything booked, but up until then, I have at least one, if not two shows every weekend. And he's coming with me to, I think, every single one of those shows. So we'll be in.
Wow.
We're in Massachusetts this weekend. Next weekend, we're back in East Haven, but then we're also going to Albany, New York. The weekend after that, we're going to Holyoke, Massachusetts. The weekend after that, I think. But like I joke because Rick, I saw you yesterday, and you were like, "I'll see you tomorrow," and I was like, Where am I wrestling tomorrow? Because I like in my head, I'm wrestling so much coming up that I'm like every week I'm like, okay, where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I going? The podcast
on the internet.